Everybody talks about big data, and there is a phenomenon that data is being gathered from every source, every touch point that we have every day. How many of you have frequent diner cards, like at Panera? Anybody have a Panera card in here? All right. Oh, I see. There we go. A Safeway card? Anybody have a Intercontinental Hotel Club card? Yep, there we go in the back. Costco? How many have a Costco card? Come on. Yeah, okay. I see. Here we go. A Plenty card? Yeah. And some of you have all of these, right? Or Red Robin, if you go to Red Robin restaurants. The thing is that every one of these resources are gathering data on you all the time. So in talking with some of the experts on data, they're not really so concerned about big data, but about the minutia of data that's out there that specifically applies to each of us. So as we look at the data that's coming through, we have to be concerned about what it means to each of the guests, our customers, and how we can utilize that to an advantage that will help us in being able to provide a better guest experience every time that that guest interacts with us. So the data is being collected from all these sources, but what we find is that we have to figure out how to utilize that data in a direct and profound way. Now, whenever we were talking a couple of weeks ago at the Future of Travel conference, there are several people that are coming up with great ideas on how to use this data. Now, we're going to see some examples as we go through in the next few minutes of things that are in place today that are already existing, but things that will come about into the future. Now, from a global standpoint, let's just consider if you have Google Home or you have Amazon Alexa, it's gathering information on you personally all the time. In fact, I was with someone just a couple of weeks ago who was telling me that Google and Amazon are pinging your home about every 3 seconds. So whether you're utilizing the system, giving commands to it or not, it's checking in to see what's going on with all the smart devices that are connected with you and to you. So we have to be aware that this data is being collected, and from our business standpoint in the hospitality tourism business, timeshare, how can we start to draw from that to figure out what's important to each and every one of those guests? Now, at the Future of Travel conference, there was a presentation by a group that has formed an organization called Daycation. Daycation is an initiative to be able to provide a resource for those resorts or facilities that have underutilized capacity for their restaurants, their clubs, their spas, their recreational facilities, and reaching out to an audience who has a desire to use those things. So they're utilizing data from a variety of sources to identify, do you and your significant other do something on the weekend? And if you do, what is that? And could you be a customer for Daycation? And then they reach out to you. Now, that kind of idea is important to know that they're taking data that exists publicly for you, about you, and they're applying that in a business context to support what we do in our business in hospitality and tourism. At the same time, it's creating a better experience for the consumer because now they know that they've got options that might not have been available to them before. At the university, we're prompting our students to be able to figure out what would the customer experience of the future be like. How do we get data that can help us to understand that? So we had 2 of our female students who came up with a really clever idea as a result of an experience they personally had. They were a member of an organization that was having a conference in New York. The 2 of them got to New York City. They were staying in a hotel down the way from where the conference was taking place. They both used Uber to be able to get to where the conference was. So they had these boxes of materials that they were taking with them. They got to the conference location. The bellman came out, took the box from the car, and escorted them up to where the meeting was taking place. They both looked at each other and realized that they didn't have any cash to be able to tip the person that was going. So they said, "Oh, what do we do? We're so sorry." So the guy didn't get a tip that had taken the box up. And they thought about this. It bothered them. They said there has to be a solution on how we can better deal with this kind of thing. So one of the things that they found is that with Uber or Lyft, you can tip the driver through the app that's there. They said, why can't we do that to create a better experience for our guests in hotels, restaurants, or whatever? We will design an app that can read a QR code on a person's name badge and tip that person virtually. They developed their business. It went through FIU Startup, and as they were moving through the process, got bought out by a Silicon Valley business there. Now, they're using data to be able to understand how they can better serve the needs of the customer. Data transferred for financial transactions that was there because people utilize QR code scanners on their mobile devices, and they can now connect and they can transact and make their job or their lives easier as a result of that interaction. So ideas are being developed constantly of how to utilize the data that's out there for us so that we can make the customer experience better. George Corbin was the former Senior VP of Digital at Marriott. He was the one who led the initiative in the design and the development of Marriott's current app. Any of you have the Marriott app on your smart device? Okay. It is progressively growing and developing along the way. Their vision at Marriott is that their app will be the total experience for the Marriott guest. That you will do your search, you'll actually book your reservation, you will do your virtual check-in and your check-out all on the smart device. Your folio, your bill, will be on your smart device. If you decide to order room service, the room service menu will be through the app. You'll place your order through the app. You'll never have to interact with anyone if you don't want to. Now, the fascinating thing is that Marriott will allow you to pay your bill right through the app. You don't have to worry about that because your credit card is attached or whatever financial arrangements you want to make. So they're progressively learning what's important to their customer, taking that data and then applying it to how do they create a better experience for all of their guests. Now, here's what's going to be transformative for all of us. Now, we've had lots of changes that have taken place over the past 10, 20, 30 years, but nothing that has been life-changing in a dramatic way like it will with the advent of 5G. 5G is already progressively being rolled out, and it will give us the capacity to do things in a much greater scale than what we've ever done before. Two companies, Baidu and Google, have been deploying satellites that give us an entire coverage of the world so that things like self-driving cars will be possible with the data movements that have to take place in order to achieve that. The Toyota person, did she leave? Okay. Because just at a conference 2 weeks ago, the point was made that there will be 10 million self-driving cars that will be produced in 2020, within the next 3 years, for deployment, because 5G will enable us to start to grow that capacity of on-street movements. So commercial vehicles already are being done. Several individual cars are being done. But we will see scale begin to take place when we get into that 2020 lifespan. Now, what does that mean for us, for our guests? If we're running shuttles back and forth to the airports, or we're taking people here, there, or elsewhere, those shuttles can be run by 5G-enabled vehicles. We know that with this capacity for movement of data, holograms are going to be possible. If any of you have been to some of the airports, some of the airlines are already experimenting with that. In fact, if you go through Miami Airport, American Airlines has a hologram that's at the international check-in area. So we're going to see more and more taking place as a result of 5G coming out. Now, here's the key thing that we have to be thinking about, because as we get more and more data on our guests and their preferences, we can start to scheme out what are all the touch points. We can now manage our interactions with the guests at every point of contact that they have, every interface that they have with us. So we can intentionally begin to design what that experience will be like prior to, during, and after they've been interfaced with us. Now, the mandate, which we've seen, is that the expectation is everything will be mobile enabled. As you saw, we all have our mobile device, our smartphones or whatever they are that we have now. So what we're seeing is that there's a manifestation of whatever this device is to new things as a result of the 5G. There was an article that was out just last week that the experimentation with contact lens that can go in, now that will be enabled for you to communicate. You'll be able to see the visualizations. So Google tried with Google Glass to be able to introduce something like that, but now you'll be able to wear a contact lens that will have those images inside. So whatever we move to, the expectation is that we will have it fully mobile enabled so that our guests can get what they want through that individual device. In fact, for those of you that have Google Home or Alexa, you control that from your iPhone or whatever mobile device you're using to be able to change the kinds of commands that it has and following. So it's not just millennials who are engaged in these smart devices and mobile devices. It is the Z generation and all of those emergent generations to come that we have to be sensitive to, because their expectation is you will communicate with them on their level. Now, the Internet of Things also makes it better for our guests, because we can now use the Internet of Things to adjust to whatever the guest's expectation is. So, Internet of Things, air conditioning systems connected to the Internet. We can now set the temperature of the space that the customer will use ahead of time, so that when they arrive, the space isn't too hot or too cold, it's comfortable to their expectations. We already know that if they are leaving the room, the lights can turn off. We can manage that through the Internet of Things, reduce the power bill. All the interactions that are occurring with the Internet of Things are going to manifest themselves as we move through 5G. So we can think critically about how do we make that better. Many hotels are already using smart mini bars in their guest rooms, so that if you remove an item, it automatically alerts the hotel that they've taken the bottle of red wine, so that now you can replace that bottle of red wine and the customer doesn't have to wait if they want another one. So we can enhance the guest experience in many ways. Now, how many of you have seen what Carnival's doing with Ocean Medallion? Okay, here we go. This is probably one of the best examples of forward thinking in the application, taking data and creating excellent customer experiences as a result of this. So the Ocean Medallion, you should search it and take a look at what they're doing. This was designed conceptually by a guy named John Paget. John was the former Chief Innovation Officer at Disney. He was there for about 7 years or so. And so now he's been at Carnival, designed the Ocean Medallion, which built off the idea of the band technology that Disney has been using. But this is like steroids. So whenever you book on a Princess cruise right now, you get the Ocean Medallion in the mail once your reservation is confirmed. And they walk you through downloading the app, and they then ask you your profile questions so that you can design what you want your cruise to be like. So you fill out the profile, and whoever's going on that cruise with you, your spouse, your children, whoever it is that's going with you, you profile all of them. What's the itinerary? What kinds of things do you like to eat? When do you want to eat? Do you go to the spa? Do you exercise? All those things. You scan your passport, you get your visa scanned right there on the device, so that whenever you arrive at the ship, you don't have to stand in a long line to check in. You walk right onto the ship. because it reads that you've got the Ocean Medallion and it lets you go right on through. Whenever you get to where your stateroom is assigned, you don't even have to open the door. It recognizes you and opens the door for you. Whenever you get to the bar, because the first thing we do once we get on board the ship is head for the bar to grab a drink so we can sit out and look at all the other people walking around at the port. Now the bartender already knows what your favorite beverage is, and they have that for you without you having to ask. Every individual. Now, you may have certain preferences. You prefer to have a certain beverage, but your spouse or significant other or your friends may prefer different things. Every person knows that they're going to get what they want because of the data that's been entered into the system. Ocean Medallion progressively learns. If you change your mind along the way and you say, I had wanted to go to the spa at 2 on Thursday, and you say, I want to go now in the evening. You change your mind. This learns the system so that now you can adjust your time to go to another place, and it'll recommend different alternatives for you as a result of that. So what we have to do is to recognize that the data that's available to us allows us to customize to individual patrons of our facilities. So we in marketing have talked a great deal about market segments, that we have millennials or we have seniors or we have business people or we have whatever. Now we can get to markets of one because we know what's important to each individual. So the revolution that's taking place is that we now can be better at providing an experience for that individual than the competition, our point of differentiation. It's not that we're going to keep doing the same things we've always done, but we're going to elevate to that next level. Now, here's what we have to do in order to stay attuned with this, is to transform our thinking. Michael Vance, who was considered the father of creative thinking with Disney, Michael Vance thought that creativity was the making of the new by rearranging the old in a new way. And we kind of have to think about that ourselves. In the timeshare business, we've been doing things the same way for years and years and years. And so with the advent of all the data that's available to us about our customers, we can now start to transform and use 5 sensing, sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, to look at how we can impact every individual in different ways. Now, I mentioned holograms earlier. We all saw those first holograms in Star Wars, right? Whenever they were sitting there having a conversation with the Jedis. And we thought, wow, wouldn't that be clever? Remember Beam Me Up Scotty in Star Trek, right? And we thought, oh, those things never happen. Just on NPR a few weeks ago, they reported that MIT, they've been able to move matter a foot already. They've been able to move matter a foot so that it reconstitutes exactly as it was. So the data that's available to us has transformative abilities, and so we have to think, how can we use that data? Here's an example of a hologram at an airport. So as you're moving through the airports, you see these already in place. Will we have those in our properties? Will we have holograms that'll serve as customer service agents? During one of the breaks we were having a conversation. Royal Caribbean has already implemented robotic bartenders. Right? So they programmed all the data in on how to make every drink that you can imagine. So they said, wow, it's terrible that the bartenders are all going to be out of a job now because robots will be doing it. Well, Royal Caribbean didn't eliminate any of the positions of robots because of the robots. What they did is they repurposed them to be better customer service agents. So now they entertain and interact with the guests, and they find that revenues have gone up as a result of that. People spend more time in the bar, and they're having a better experience, so they spend more, and they have greater levels of satisfaction. So data to application, it's up to us to think critically about how can we take what's available to us to make a difference in creating exceptional guest experience for all those that we have in our portfolio. Thank you very much for having me with you this afternoon.
Great job.